The world is perfect. Appreciate the details. The Dead Don't Die is directed by Jim Jarmusch and starring Bill Murray, Adam Driver, Tilda Swinton, Chloe Sevigny, Tom Waits, Caleb Landry Jones, Steve Buscemi, and Danny Glover. Before I go any further, I just want to say there will not be any plot spoilers in this review. This film takes place in a small town called Centerville and predominantly centers around the sheriff's department, which is consisting of the sheriff and Bill Murray and his two deputies in Chloe Sevigny and Adam Driver as they're dealing with the dead coming back to life as zombies. This is the newest film from director Jim Jarmusch. Jim Jarmusch is a director who pretty much has spent his entire career in the indie film world. If you're a big fan of indie movies, perhaps you have heard of his films. And I'm someone who is a big fan of his movies. I have a couple of films in my collection. Two of them are behind me, and his films are really fantastic because they're so unique and so particular to him that you really don't see films like his all the time, really at all. And that is what I really liked about this movie, is it is so quintessentially Jim Jarmusch that it's both a positive and a negative. It's a positive for me because I like him, but it can be a negative for you out there, for people who don't know who he is or don't know what his style is at all. You're going to be probably completely taken aback about this film. And what is interesting is that it's a film that bills itself or markets itself as a zombie apocalypse film. There have been plenty of those throughout the history of cinema. There's been a huge zombie resurgence over the last 15, 20 years or so, and this film takes that premise and does its own thing with it. And what I mean by that is this film is so self-aware of what it is that it almost hates itself, and it plays on that with great deadpan humor. Great deadpan humor that I really like, and that I think a lot of people who know Jim Jarmusch's humor will like, but it is not a film for everyone because of the way in which he treats the material. The comedy, like I said, is not something that is going to play to a mass audience, specifically when it's done in a satirical way like this film does, is very difficult to get over to an audience, because comedy is not the same for everyone. What I find funny is not what you're going to find funny, and vice versa. I also will say that the acting by everyone in this movie, I think, is really good. I think it's just so perfect to what this movie's going for. Bill Murray is just fantastic when it comes to this type of deadpan comedy. Adam Driver's great. Chloe Sevigny's great. The standout for me is Tilda Swinton. She is wild and crazy in this movie. She is carrying a samurai sword around throughout it, and I just really love the weirdness of her character. The weirder this movie gets, I think the better it is. Unfortunately, all of that weirdness and all of those things don't really lead to much of a plot. That's another thing that is very particular to Jim Jarmusch's films. His films are not very plot-driven. There are things happening, but they're not important things. His movies are not made to be three-act structures. They're not made to be character journeys for the most part. In his films, things just happen just to happen, and when you get to the end, you get to the end. And that's just the way his films are. So this film could be rather underwhelming to people who were going to this film thinking they were going to get an action film that has to do with people fighting zombies. That's in there, but that is really not what this film is about at all. This film is a satire. This film is making fun of itself. It's making fun of the genre to a certain extent, and it's very interesting in what it is saying, and it's just kind of a fun time if you want a quirky, unique, fresh film, because I can guarantee you're probably not going to see a film like this all year. This film also plays on expectations very well. What you think this film is going to do, where you think these characters are going to go, and where you think the story is going to go, doesn't necessarily happen in that manner, and it keeps the film very fresh, and it keeps the film rather engaging for me because you're not quite sure what is going to happen from scene to scene, and unfortunately that can lead to a lot of things that you may not like. There are things like that in the film that I didn't like, where I thought they were going to do something with some characters and they just didn't, and it kind of was disappointing because I was interested in seeing where they would go, and unfortunately that didn't happen. So with all of that being said, I'm probably going to give this film a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It does have some problems when it comes to expectation, when it comes to just the subject matter and the way it is handled, and the satire and the comedy may not be for everyone. It worked mostly for me. I really like the actors in this film, I really like the acting, but I kind of wanted a little more with this film that the film I don't think was ever going to deliver to me, so I kind of fell into that trap that I'm trying to warn people not to fall into. So this has been my review of The Dead Don't Die. If you like this video, please check out the other videos on my channel.